Like previous speakers, I want to acknowledge and appreciate that this amendment provides for funding to be allocated from within the Climate Action Fund to meet the demands associated with the re-wetting and the reinstatement with peatlands associated with Bordnamona and extraction of peat for various uses heretofore. But in welcoming this provision, I would ask the Minister to explain to the House, or to inform the House here today in his response, that the previous commitments made by the last government in relation to the repatriation of part of the PSO funding, accounting to 20 million per annum for the next 4 years to be geared towards this project also, is now not the case, despite the commitments that was made, despite the understanding that there was amongst Bordnamona, its workers and the regions and the constituency that I and others represent. That was the understanding, that was the commitment, and that's not now the case. If that's not now the case, does this amendment provide for 20 million per annum over the next 4 years, as was relayed to us at the time at which the announcement was made and a commitment given? It would appear, from my information, that the EU Commission no longer supports that contention, that belief, that understanding, that commitment that was given previously in this House and outside. So I would ask for you to clarify that matter. And I think as a result of that, it's incumbent on me to ask 2 further questions that I would expect an answer be given to this House and to my constituents as a result of those questions, here and now and here today too. In relation to the funding that was approved by the EU Council this week, much has been alluded to the funding that was made available under various headings, whether it be the CAP or whether it be the Just Transition, and the drop-off in funding associated with them as compared to recent publications. And I acknowledge and appreciate that it would have looked far graver some months ago were it not for the introduction of the emergency funding that compensates us in relation to CAP and compensates us in relation to other areas. And I welcome that, and I appreciate the job at hand and the job of work that is now incumbent on those with responsibilities to ensure that any such programmes, any such conditionality is one which helps and assists those who will partake in it to improve the lot of their livelihood and of their incomes and so forth. But in relation to Just Transition, in relation to the now inclusion of peatlands in the coal regions in Transition Fund, can you confirm that's the case in the first instance? Secondly, can you confirm that measures that will be used and targeted at the regions will target where the job losses are, where the job losses have been, in order to help and assist in finding alternatives in those regions, in those areas? Because despite the commitment that was given in the Just Transitioners report that was approved and welcomed by all stakeholders and everybody associated with it, there was a commitment to ensure that the regions most affected by it would be targeted for such funding. And I know in relation to the first round of funding, which is only 50% of what was provided by government and 50% of what apparently was provided by ESB, which was geared towards those areas most affected, that's not necessarily the case. And that's no disrespect to those applications that are at hand and that are being adjudicated on and that will be afforded. But I think in the context of the larger pot of funding that will be available under the coal and peatlands regions in transition, that the criteria associated that must accommodate those areas that are most affected, and nowhere has been more affected in the context of these job losses than the county and the constituency that I represent, and I would appreciate a commitment that that will be the case. Thirdly, in relation to that same report that was welcomed, as I said, by all stakeholders and welcomed by government and acknowledged by everybody who participated in its deliberations and ultimately its publication by Kieran Mulvey, there was a commitment in that we all respected, and that was to look at alternative use associated with the power plants in Shannonbridge and Lanesborough. But as we speak, I am made aware of the very fact that ESB are are seeking tenders and are seeking contracts for the decommissioning and the demolition of those facilities. That's a far cry from the commitment that was made by the Just Commissioner. It's a far cry from the response that we've seen from all parties and none to what was contained within it in relation to its recommendations. And I would hope that you will hold those bodies to account. I would hope that you would engage with them to ensure that every opportunity is afforded to the localities, to the regions and to the commitments that have been made by representatives and by authorities and by stakeholders to investigate, explore and ensure that other alternatives are found and that this government supports those other alternatives, that has a role in ensuring that those regions have prospects from the facilities that they propose to demolish. So, as I said, I welcome the commitment that is contained within the amendment, but I think it is incumbent on you to inform the House that this is now a replacement for a commitment that was made previously which has not been honoured, and the reasons why it hasn't been honoured are not yet clear to me, and they need to be clarified and they need to be put on the record of the House. And also that you go beyond that, that you commit to what was originally envisaged, a 4-year programme. And if you can't do that, say it now so as we know exactly where we stand. Because these people, these areas, these regions have been let down a lot now in the last 2 or 3 years since the first commitment was made. And they can't and I can't afford for that to continue or for that to be the case into the future. I'm now a member of a government party. I am supporting this government on the basis of the ambition that was contained within the programme for government, one of which was to address just transition fairly and appropriately. And I would hope that you can stand in front of this House now today and guarantee to me that that is the case, and also confirm to me that commitments were made previously can't be stood over, the reasons they can't be stood over, and what you're doing to ensure that similar commitments can be made by this government as is contained within the programme for government. Thank you very much.